One second.
Jeez, he can't go when we're still. You poke harder,
Okay.
but it's wrapped around your ear correctly. For the audience.
Oh, no.
When the red lights are on, that's the camera that's on. Johnny, you'll need to worry about that.
Good afternoon. I'm Johnny Thomas, your host for the third and final discussion of the UMES Upon a Time series. The programs are designed to highlight the valuable resources in the Frederick Douglass Library on the campus of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, has received a number of grants to help us categorize and digitize our archival materials to make it more available to scholars in our community. This afternoon, we've invited 3 graduates of Maryland State College, that was the name of UMES, from 1948 to 1970. They all attended Maryland State during the 1960s, a time of great turbulence in our country. The civil rights struggle was being fought, and so was the war in Vietnam. But here in Princess Anne, around 1,000 students were earning their college degrees. This trip down memory lane will feature photos we've gathered from the college yearbooks and local news reports, all contained in our archives. So let me introduce our desks. First, we meet Norman Tillman. He graduated in 1966, and here's how he looked in our yearbooks. Second, we're joined by Peggy Stewart. She was a member of the last Maryland State graduating class in 1970. We found her picture here as a member of the Home Economics Club.
Jesus.
You see? And finally, Ernie Satchel, who graduated in 1963 and later returned as a member of our fine arts faculty. Here's how he looked in his senior picture.
Oh, wow. That's that suit.
I think we missed Mr. Tillman's picture, so if we could go back to that.
Gotta go back.
There
There
we
it
go.
is. Yeah.
So good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Good afternoon.
Doing well. Good afternoon.
It's good to sit down with you guys. As a student, it's really exciting. So first of all, what are the main things that you guys are excited about to come back to the college?
The growth that's taken place.
Yes.
When I was a student here from 59 to 63, we only had 2 dorms.
Wow.
And, 3, 2 male dorms and Murphy Hall, which was the women's dorm.
Yeah.
And the faculty buildings, we had Wilson Hall, we had Trigg Hall, and we had some of the small buildings on campus. We had very few. We only had about 500 and some students.
Wow.
And so things have really changed since I graduated.
How about you two?
Well, to add to what Mr. Satchel has said, the ladies only had the 1 dorm, so when I came, and I had to stay off campus because there was no housing. And so many had applied that year, maybe 100. but it's still, we needed housing. So we lived off campus, some of us, until housing became available on campus. And we stayed in Brockett Square. Mrs. Brockett, who taught down in Worcester County. Yes, and Mrs. Baker, some of my friends stayed there. I called it Brockett Square and Baker's Tourist. That wasn't the correct name, but we gave the name. And we usually had, if we didn't have transportation, we had to walk from Greenwood on campus every day.
And that was not an easy
No, it wasn't,
walk, because
especially
that's at
when
least-
weather was inclement.
Right,
Yes.
right. That's at least more than a mile from the campus. But for myself, because I'm a native of Princess Anne,
Yeah.
so I've always seen the campus even as a young child. I also came back after graduating to work here at the campus. So I used to recruit, and the thing about it is I enjoyed seeing the students who, at the time that I was able to recruit, actually matriculate and come to the campus. And some of them, because this is a rural area, then we focused on the eastern shore, the high schools and what have you here on the eastern shore of Maryland. But there were times that I'd have to leave the eastern shore and go to the western shore, which is, as we say, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and
Yeah.
some of those other areas to recruit and to see the mixture of students that attended, quote unquote, what we called Little Maryland State College.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was just a blessing. I mean, it broadened my scope and what have you to be able to, get to see students and talk with them from many states in the United States and also some foreign countries.
Yeah, and we still have a lot of foreign exchange students and students coming from all over the country to come to this school.
But to just add one thing, I don't know if you have it here now, work study.
We do.
I thank God for that because I was a poor student working my way through. So I worked in the, it was called the library then under Miss Jessie's.
Yeah.
She was Cotman, then Smith. And it was a blessing.
Yeah, I think UMES has done an amazing job of maintaining those, I guess maintaining resources for students so that they can help themselves outside of the school or within the school.
Yes.
So our first question for you guys today is, what was the campus life like when you were here? And based on seeing things now, how much do you think it has changed?
Oh, campus life has definitely changed a lot now, but it was so exciting to us, the activities that we had. We look forward to, which I know students, I guess, all do now. We look forward to homecoming. We look forward to Mardi Gras, which was a big thing, and we could invite our friends and or whomever. We loved going to the games, and when you see, when you see the alumni from Baltimore,
Photograph right there. As you can see.
come there, if you see, as you see our alumni coming back, they have, they did. They have so much spirit and vitality, and we would rock the bleachers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we enjoyed it. So I'm not sure if students now have the energy
Yeah.
that we had back then. But I just loved college life.
Yeah.
I did.
During our tour, our time at Maryland State College, you couldn't pay a student to go home when we had a home football game.
That's correct.
And the town people came from near and far, from Baltimore, from Philadelphia, from Norfolk, to come to our games.
Yes.
And the bleachers would be full. And there was so much school spirit.
Yeah.
Everybody got excited. The homecoming, we had floats, we had ROTC, we had parades that all went through the town of Princess Anne.
Yes.
And so there was camaraderie between the campus and the town. And so everybody was involved in it. The floats, we had a professor here, Dick Thomas.
Yes.
He would address everyone as, "Hello, young people."
Yeah.
And he was a real booster, a hawk booster. He would put the flags up on every game on the conference flags on the stadium, and when he retired, I used to go around with him, and we would pick up flatbeds from the farmers in the area. They would loan us the flatbeds to build floats on. And Jimmy Mosley, who was head of the art department then, he coordinated the floats. And all the shops would be filled. We'd be down on the farm, and we'd be working a whole week of homecoming. And we'd had students there everywhere. Everybody wanted to get involved. The enthusiasm was just overwhelming.
Yeah.
It was.
And with a small campus like this, we knew everybody on a first-name basis, and it was like a big family.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm happy to hear that was the environment that you guys created for yourselves, especially in such, I'd say, a turbulent time for Black Americans. So a question we have is that during that time, in some ways, Black students were the backbone of the civil rights movement. And we just wanted to ask, like, being down here, what was your what was your experience with that? How did that affect you? How did that affect your drive to go to college or drive while you were in college? Things of that nature.
Again, for myself, because I'm a native of the area, and I was a student here at the time that we had what you call the sit-ins, the demonstrations,
Yeah.
etc.
Were any of you involved in any sit-ins at any time?
Only locally
Just a
here.
little. Okay.
All right. I remember one time that we walked up from the campus to go into the town, and the fire hoses and the state police and the dogs and all that sort of thing met us
Yeah.
just as we were getting ready to approach Metropolitan United Methodist Church.
Yeah.
And so they turned the water hoses on.
We have a photograph of the
That's
incident
it.
you're talking about.
They
Actually.
put the dogs on us, etc. And they didn't want us to make our way all the way to the top of the hill, but we did. And we had a pastor at Metropolitan,
Yeah.
and he made sure that the doors of the church were physically open so that if any of us, because of if we needed a respite or whatever, we could come into the church. But that was a terrible time because the town, in a sense, they wanted the business from the students, but they did not want the students to have the freedom in order to be able to, say, eat and sit down at the restaurant, and that was also the place where you bought your bus ticket.
Yeah.
And you couldn't go inside to buy your bus ticket. They wanted you to use, the windows and what have you from the outside.
Yeah.
But that was not in a sense, a pleasant time, but it was a necessary time. It was a necessary activity
Yeah.
that we did. But I loved it because I commuted and what have you, and I walked because I didn't have an automobile
Yeah.
to come to the campus. As as Peggy said, out in what we call Greenwood. So that was at least a mile and a half from the campus.
Yeah.
That was so we didn't have the transportation, but the activities, you couldn't beat it.
Yeah.
Because we were so encapsulated and what have you. The football games, the basketball games, the track and field competitions.
Yeah.
That was also a time when we were able to see students and what have you from, say, Morgan State University, Bowie State, Coppin State, Virginia Union, Virginia State University. And I, in particular, like what we call the angel flights.
Yeah.
Angel flights were the young ladies who were also involved in the military.
Yes, the ROTC.
And they were dressed in the ROTC.
Yeah.
And they were dressed in their uniforms and what have you. But oh my, the cadence and what have you that they
step.
did.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely amazing. Right.
Yeah, we had fly-ins from Dover Air Force Base. The helicopters during Military Day, helicopters would land on the in the stadium.
Yeah.
Right.
And we had drill team competition and so forth. And we had a crackerjack drill team. And so there were so many things going on.
Yeah.
We also had a top flight track team. The track team. The track team took first place at the pin relays,
that I was gonna-
and we had people like Russ Rogers
Yes.
and who went to the Pan Am Games, and so many more athletes that did extremely well.
Yeah.
And we had so many football players that
Yes.
made it to the pros.
We saw a couple NFL
Yeah.
stars.
Yes.
We had Johnny Sample, who was, I think, one of the first, and just happened to attend the same high school that he attended.
Wow.
And I'll give you a little bit about Johnny Sample. He played football in high school. He played basketball. He ran track, and he was outstanding at all of them. On the football team, he played quarterback. He played defense,
Wow.
back. He did all the punting. He did all the kicking.
Wow.
So I mean, he was the man.
Yeah, he did everything.
Multi-talented, yes.
And there was so much pride. Dr. Williams, who was president at the time, used to hold after we won a football game or something like that
Yeah.
on the road. He would acknowledge the football team at our conventions. We had at our assemblies rather.
Yeah.
We had assemblies every Wednesday.
Yes.
And he would always acknowledge the teams. And he was a star football player himself, wide receiver, so I understand. So there was a lot of interest in sports, and so many young men went on to become professional. Emerson Boozer, what's his name? We call him Nugget. Carl Harrison.
Yes.
Yeah. So many.
Roger Brown. also
Roger
went to
Brown.
school.
Yes.
Roger Brown was. I remember when he got
He
his
has a picture of
contract.
Roger Brown DJing
Okay.
right
Yeah,
there.
I remember when he got his
Holds the
contract.
golf- Used to hold the golf tournament.
Yes.
What is his name?
I'll come back to that.
Okay.
But Roger Brown, I was taking a drafting class with Roger Brown at night,
Yeah.
and so when he got his contract, that was the last class he attended. Yeah, he had a '56 convertible Mercury,
Wow.
and he was a big man, 300 some pounds.
Wow.
And when he got in the Mercury, it looked like it was going to roll over. Yeah, but yeah, he was drafted by the Detroit Lions,
Yeah.
and went on to do great things.
So you guys would say that the sports community here was something that allowed the students to really get together. Like that was really what
yeah.
brought you guys
Yes.
together.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
Absolutely.
yes. And speaking of track and field, those that could afford to go to the Penn Relays, yeah, I mean, I never had money to go, but some of my friends were able to go to Penn Relays, and they look forward to that. So that was another time we got together with other colleges and
Something else I wanted to ask about was Greek life. What was Greek life like? Or any of you involved in Greek organizations? How central to the campus was that?
I was not involved in Greek life. Right.
it was here, but I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
involved.
Well, I was involved. I was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha.
Okay.
We actually have a
And-
picture of you and your brothers.
Yeah.
Right there, actually.
Oh yeah, yeah. We it was three of us online when I pledged, and we had step shows, and we used to do step shows in the dining hall and out in the Oval, and
We still use that, actually, the academic oval.
Okay,
yes,
Yeah.
the academic Oval, and that's where the track team used to practice.
that's right.
And going to the dining hall, which was Waters Hall at the time, you had to look both ways because you would get run over by the track team.
Wow. Oh, they used to practice in Waters?
No,
No,
the
that's-
Oval.
Oval.
They
Oh,
would run
okay.
around the
Around-
Oval.
around
That's
the
where the
Oval.
track team
Okay.
used to practice.
That was the
And
center
so,
of the campus.
yes. And so there was just something going on campus all the time. And we used to have shows, dramatic shows that were put on,
Yeah.
and theatrical shows. And the guys in the shop used to build the props, and the art students, we used to paint the props.
Yeah.
And home economics used to make the costumes.
Yeah.
And I remember we got a lot of green material from Jessup, the prison at Jessup, and so a lot of things were made with that green material,
Yeah.
and we used that green material on the props and all kinds of things. So, but we pretty much did everything ourselves.
Yeah. So you say that the campus was very self-sufficient at that
Very,
time?
Yes.
very
Absolutely.
self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Very self-sufficient.
And do you think that was out of necessity, or do you just think the student body was a little bit more resourceful at the time?
Out of necessity, right? Because you really didn't have a lot of services and what have you, say in the town.
Yeah. Especially
or-
they were available to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So almost you had to you made your way, if I can say it that way.
Yeah.
Another thing that, as a student here, we used to have what they call a milk house,
Yeah.
and that was not a part.
What's
it
a
was
milk
not-
house? I've never heard of that.
And that's where the farmers would bring their milk in big containers and what have you, and it would be processed and shipped to, quote unquote, say major markets.
Yeah.
but that was immediately as you come across the campus from, at that time, there was only one way to get onto the campus.
Yeah.
And that was you had to come into the town of Princess Anne and come down what we call Broad Street. And then that's the entrance to the campus. Naturally, there's a newer entrance and what have you.
Yeah.
But anytime anyone wanted to come to the university for whatever reason,
Yeah.
they had to use, yes, that was just one way in, one way out. But people just loved coming here, right? And shall I also say, students did too.
Yeah.
Because at that time, we only had one major bus system that for transportation, and be it if you wanted to go to Norfolk, or if you wanted to go to Baltimore, or if you wanted to go to Washington, or you wanted to go to New York,
Yeah.
that was the Greyhound Trailway.
I still take the Greyhound home sometimes.
Do you really?
Yeah.
But at that time, the bus did not come to the campus, all right? You had to go into the town, all right, and purchase your ticket and catch the bus in town, and that was where everything was basically segregated.
Yeah.
But
And were the buses at the time still segregated also, or had that ended?
they were still segregated.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yeah, that was back in the 60s. The early, I'm going to say in a sense, the early 60s, early to mid 60s.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was, you didn't have front row seat when it comes to
Yeah.
riding the interstate transportation.
Yeah, I think something I observed from just seeing the pictures of you guys is that even though it was such a turbulent time, you guys were A, you all looked so happy, and B, you guys were so much better dressed than we are now. And we have some pictures of you guys. We have so when I say so well dressed, there's a couple of pictures, and everybody looked dressed to the nines every day.
Yeah.
Wearing that skirt.
Our jeans didn't have any holes in them.
That's right.
No way. Absolutely not.
And you'd see the afros. You saw afros
Yeah,
all over
right.
campus.
Yes.
Yes.
That picture,
Yes.
I love that picture so much. It's
And
just,
one thing I must say, I came here in '59, and my first year here, I had the experience of seeing Duke Ellington's band perform.
yeah.
And
We actually have a photograph of that too.
yeah, see what happened? Duke Ellington, a lot of celebrities passing through
Right.
could not stay in local hotels,
Right.
Yeah.
and so Dr. Williams, we call JT, used to put them up on campus.
Yeah.
And to show their gratitude, they would give us a free concert.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember the first time that was the first time I'd seen live music like that. I came
Yeah.
from a small town.
Yeah.
And the bass player was wearing an afro. It was the first time I'd seen an afro.
Wow.
And I said to myself, I was telling my friend, I said, look like they make enough money to get a haircut. But, I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
But, funny little things like that. And I remember Count Basie played sometime later, a few years later. And when Count Basie came through, that was during the time of the Penn Relays. He had his bus, and he took a few students with him on the bus to the Penn Relays.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he stayed in Harvard Hall, next door to where my room was.
Wow.
And that's the kind of camaraderie we had with the entertainers.
Yeah.
And how all kinds of big name people do come through here.
We have photographs of a lot of them. You could see that over. For me, even being a student here, it's kind of shocking to know that we have a picture of Martin Luther King here. We have a picture of Thurgood Marshall here.
Yes.
And I guess as a student, here are the pictures right there. But as a
That's
student,
Jackie
it kind of
Robinson.
creates like a realness for history to me, I guess, because these are people that you study about and you idolize them as a kid, and to know that they were real people and that they were here and they spoke here was mind blowing. Were any of you here when Martin Luther King was here and he spoke?
Yeah, I was, but I didn't get to see him.
Okay.
Right? They didn't at that time. They didn't dismiss classes when they had somebody who was noteworthy.
Oh, wow.
You still had to go to class and what have
And you were a dedicated student to have gone to class while Martin Luther King was here.
Yeah, there's no question about it. But I must admit, after he did speak and what have you, I heard that he was in one of the buildings.
Yeah.
So a couple of students and we called ourselves going to that building, but we could only look through the window.
Yeah, and did you
But
see
we
him?
didn't know. We didn't
Oh,
see
okay.
him. No. We wanted to, but they had the Venetian blinds closed.
Outside of Duke Ellington, did any of the rest of you see any like big historical figures with your own eyes, like see them personally while you were here?
Not
I remember Andrew Young speaking here, and some of the other people.
It was many years. I mean,
Yeah.
after being a student, that you had noteworthy persons to come,
Yeah.
and what have you. But we weren't students at that time,
Right.
Yeah.
right? So I'll just say this: Ella Fitzgerald, for example.
Yeah.
And that was many years after we had left, as far as graduates and what have you. We sat under her performance.
Yeah.
Because the building was being dedicated to her.
Wow.
All right. But that was many years after the 60s were over.
Right. Also, Nikki Giovanni
Oh, yes.
came.
Yeah.
She spoke.
Yeah, I remember when she spoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was great, but it was very short. I
Short.
think it was about 10 to 12 minutes, something
No
like
more
that.
than that,
Yeah,
yes.
but she was great.
And most recently, if I can just say this real quick,
Yeah,
Michelle Obama. But here again,
Right.
we were not students.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Ernie and I, we were working here at the
Yeah.
time. But
I wish I would have been there to see that.
yeah.
Speaking of these people of this great stature who were famous, were there any people who, like just staff, faculty, anyone on campus who had a large impact on you that you like remembered throughout your life?
Yes, for me,
Yes.
it was quote unquote Reverend
Yeah.
W. Tyser Nelson.
Yeah.
He was a minister, but he was also my sociology teacher.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was interested in the ministry.
Yeah.
And to see someone not from the area,
Yeah.
that enlivened me, if I could say it that way.
Yeah.
All right. And I loved his voice. So Reverend W. Tyson Nelson was, in a sense, a mentor for me.
And it was the way he spoke that you, I guess, aspired to reach?
Yeah, that, but he also, his method of teaching and what have you, I thoroughly learned a lot.
Yeah.
Right? But W. Tyson Nelson was the person for me.
And may I add something? Reverend Nelson was also the pastor of my church, Union Baptist Church in Eastville, Virginia.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
he baptized me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had known him for quite a few years before I came to Maryland State College.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was
And
not
he was a
from the
brilliant,
area.
brilliant man.
Yeah, he was not from the area.
Very brilliant.
It's interesting that the same person that he brings up as the large impact on him was also your pastor.
Yes.
So that's like, it's a
Did
small
you know
world.
that he was?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes. And I loved his car.
He had the blue Buick.
That's right.
Well,
Yes.
well, my person would be, we called her D.P. Wallace, Davinia P. Wallace, who was very, very strict, and she was stern, but she wanted you to do your very, very best.
Yeah.
She would always tell us, plan your work and work your plan.
Yeah.
And that meant to set a schedule for yourself, include all of her assignments and anyone else assignments, and make sure you do those assignments and have them in not the day of. She would take it the day before, so if you wanted her to. So I really loved her. She really set very, very good examples for us. And a B was never good enough for DP. She would always tell you, strive for that A. And I recall seeing her maybe a couple of years before she passed, and I told her that I was an administrator. She said, "Oh, you're not in the classroom now." I said, "No." I said, "I finished my guidance degree, and now I'm an administrator at Snow Hill High School." And she said, "That's wonderful. Do you have your doctorate degree yet?" I said, "No, that's not on my list right now." "Well, make sure you do that." So I know I still don't have it, but she just, many stand out to me. You know, they set very, very good examples.
Yeah.
My instructors did.
You can tell, like you can tell hearing you speak, like seeing you speak about it, that like you
just-
remember her extremely vividly.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I do. She put a lot of work in us.
Yeah, and it worked out. Like it's
It
you
did.
guys have come
It
back
did.
to give back to us in a similar way, and we
Yes.
greatly appreciate that. But for you, who was it?
It was Jimmy Mosley.
Jimmy Mosley.
Jimmy Mosley was head of the art department.
Yes.
And he was an unusual person. He was first vice president of National
Mr.
Conference of
Mosley
Artists,
right
Yes.
National Conference of Artists, and he was highly respected in the art world. And he looked after his students. He was like a parent in some way. You know, he went the extra mile to work with us.
Yeah.
We did not have a motor pool as such when we were in school. I think we had about 10, 12 majors. And so what he used to do, he used to borrow President Williams' Buick. A lot of Buicks here. It was a Buick salesman that was working here, Mr. Hull.
Yes.
He was selling everybody Buicks.
Wow.
Yes.
And so Dr. Williams had a black Buick. And Mosley was good friends with the president. And he used to borrow the president's black Buick, and he would take us to Baltimore, to Washington, D.C., to the art galleries. He would take us all over the place, to Philadelphia, you name it.
Yeah.
And not only that, he had us. We were very active in that we were participating in shows in Easton and Salisbury, and we were shipping works to other black institutions all over the country.
Yeah.
And we were winning a lot of prizes. In fact, one year we pretty much swept all of the awards at the White Chemical Art League in Salisbury, and we were cleaning up in Easton at the Academy of the Arts. That was because of Mosley. He was just said, Satchel, you have to show your work. If you're an artist, you have to show your work. If you're a music major, you have to sing or play an instrument.
Yeah.
And if you are an art major, you've got to exhibit.
Yeah.
And so he used to always preach that. He was very much imitated. We had students that would talk like him and so forth, and you know everybody enjoyed him.
Yeah.
You know. We had students that had financial difficulty. Mostly we'd go out and try to find jobs for them.
Yeah.
And so forth. That's the kind of person he was.
Yeah.
He was very dedicated to the department, and you would see him in on weekends working and things like that.
Yeah.
Something that you don't see too much anymore.
And the impact that he had stuck. So the
Yes.
trips that you were talking about, we've made sure to maintain that. So the trips to art galleries
Yes.
all over, those still happen. And now we have of course, the Mosley Gallery, which is in his honor.
Yeah, and see, we didn't have a lot of documented very many books on black art. And what Mosley used to do, he used to take clippings from newspapers and so forth, and he had a large file, and he was always teaching from his file what he was able to glean from newspapers and
Yeah.
so forth. And so he made sure that we knew about what was happening in the black art world.
Yeah.
And I thank him to this day for that.
And you went on to have the exact same job as Mr. Mosley.
Yes.
And can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yes, it was sort of by accident. I was at my mother's home, and so Mosley called. He had a vacancy, and he was going to offer me a job. And so my mother said he called to get my phone number,
Yeah.
and so said, "All right, hold on, Mr. Mosley." Said, "I think he's pulling up in the yard now." And so I answered the phone, and so I talked with him, and so he offered me a job, and I came here in '71, and as they said, the rest is history. I came here, and it was difficult to get away.
Yeah. And did you adopt his teaching style? Like, what did you take from him in terms of moving into his role? What did you take from what you learned from him in your time?
When I came here, we did the same thing. We tried to get students involved in exhibiting and so forth, and we did all the kind of things that Mosley did.
Yeah.
I did with my students, and we worked here together for a number of years until his death.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot from him, and became a better teacher, and I think a better person for having known Mosley.
Yeah.
I knew what it was like to be responsible, what the responsibility was, and we owe a lot of a debt of gratitude to him for, and so many of us do.
Yeah, I think something that we see is it seems like in that time teachers took a little bit more, took the teaching you guys to be great young men and great young women rather than being great students. And can you guys talk a little bit more about the more personal connection that students had with teachers here at that time?
I just want to say one thing. I don't want to dominate, but I just want to say one thing. The relationship we had with Mosley. Mosley lived on campus. We had faculty housing because blacks couldn't find housing in the neighborhood with indoor plumbing.
Wow.
It just wasn't available. And so the construction majors used to build a housing on campus, and they would work during the summer. They had jobs until the unions found out about it, and they had to stop it.
Wow.
But to show you the kind of relationship, when Mosley's second daughter was born, he had to move some furniture. So he grabbed 2 or 3 of us to come down to his house and help him move furniture and so things like that. And when we graduated, Dr. Williams, he liked to barbecue. He set up a barbecue. He was grilling steaks and so forth, and out in front of his. He lived in an apartment on campus, and he had all of us there, and he served a steak. Wow. And so forth. These are the kind of interactions. And when during the holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving, when a lot of students, we had students here from Oklahoma and different places, it wasn't practical to go home. If you go home by bus, by the time you got there, you had to turn around and come back. And so a lot of faculty members invited students, and the dining hall was closed, they would invite students to come to their homes for Thanksgiving dinner and so forth. Those are the kind of things they had. And so it was very personal. We had a lot of respect for those faculty members. And they were just like surrogate parents in a way.
Are there any specific non-academic lessons that you guys receive from those professors that like stick out to you, like work your plan and plan your work? Like, what are there any other sayings or things that you learned that were not academic, just about being a young man, being a young woman, about how to carry yourself in life that you would really draw back to a teacher?
For me, it was through W. Tyser in particular, because he was a minister that he also either spoke or preached at a lot of the community churches and what have you in the area, and because he didn't know where some things were located, he would often say to me, "Tillman, where's such and such a church? Or how do I get to such and such a place?" He said, "You're from here. You ought to know everything." But W. Tyser taught me how to dress. Yes, that was not something that I'd like to say that I really needed to know. But I say taught me how to dress. It was a thing of when you're going out, you got to present yourself. Right. He said, "I can't teach you that, but I can show you how to do that." So even some years after that, when I was, quote unquote, in the ministry, then I too would then have him to come, to the several churches that I had at that time. And he would preach. But also, it was a thing of when I taught in the public school system in the area, then I would have him to come down and speak to the students and what have you, because I was at that time, I was advisor to what we call the student council, which is on the college level, a student government association. So I would have him to come down and he would talk, and he was very personable. He would say to the students, "If you come to Maryland State, look me up." But the other thing was through the Methodist Church. W. Tyser was the financial aid coordinator for the Methodist Church, and that was how I got my first scholarship to come to then Maryland State College, because other than that, I didn't have the money. All right. but he took me even before that. I'm saying as a student.
Yeah.
He saw what I wanted to become.
Yeah.
And he took me under his wings and would often, tell me how to maneuver and what have you, because at the time, I didn't know how to handle, in a sense, say people.
Yeah.
But he was my sociology instructor. So, tying that in, and he'd let me know sometimes through sociology, it doesn't always, you can't use that all the time
Yeah.
for certain things when you quote unquote out in the public. But yeah, he taught me a lot that was not academic.
Yeah.
Right.
And Miss Stewart?
Okay, I am thinking of Miss Elps, who was my fashion design teacher, and she would always plan trips to FIT, Fashion Institute of New York, and if we didn't have the money, I would do alterations for mostly anyone, so that I could get enough money to go on that trip to New York. And also, at my church, a young man asked would I make him this suit. Had never made a man's suit in my life. Didn't know what I was doing, but thank God it turned out great. Took a lot of work, and I did get compensated well for that suit. Also, when I started teaching, I made sure that was one field trip my students looked forward to, going to New York.
Yeah.
To the museum and to the Fashion Institute. And I would have fundraisers so that no one that wanted to go would be left home. So I did get that from Miss Elps. And she also provided me a ride to New York to see my parents.
Yeah.
So I would drive her, and she would put me out at 8th Avenue subway, and I could go on out to St. Albans and go to my parents.
Something that I find really interesting about each of your stories actually is the people that you look up to, you all went on to have the exact same professions as them,
You're
down
right.
to the job.
Yeah.
So for each of you,
You're right.
you being a reverend, being a teacher, and being the art director here at this
Yeah.
exact same college. And
True.
I think the interesting thing about that is like you all grew from those people and you held on to that stuff. And so here we still have all of those traditions from Mr. Mosley, and that's largely been carried down by you, making sure that that trip stays around. And I think this is, for you guys, for me, indirectly, we stand on your shoulders kind of the same way that you stand on their shoulders to do what you guys do today. And that's really cool to me. It's really interesting that like you can see how much it stuck.
Yeah, and one thing I must add, when I was a student here, we had what was called Design for Living Week. Lois Tolles from Philadelphia, I believe, used to come down in a whole week. And what she would do, she would put us in two groups, women in one group and men in a separate group, and went through all kinds of things on grooming,
Yeah.
how to hair products
So like an etiquette course.
for African American hair, proper way to shave.
Yeah.
We went through all of those kinds of things. How to select a wardrobe, what should be contained in a wardrobe, and how to look for quality in shoes, for clothing, and all kinds of things like that. I learned an immense amount of knowledge from this lady and her team. But these are some of the things came from a small town,
Yeah.
and so many of us did, and so we wasn't privileged to a lot of things,
Yeah.
and so it was eye opening,
Yeah.
and we looked at sneakers and things like that, how to look for the quality in those and what have. It was very, 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 very interesting,
Yeah.
to say the least.
And even down to the president of the institution, Dr. Williams, the word was, you just do not walk on the grass. That's what the sidewalks are for. So he wanted to make sure that the campus looked beautiful and that it was manicured.
We still maintain that.
And okay.
As you guys can see going through it, you still try to maintain that the best we
So
can.
he didn't want you to, make a path where there was quote unquote where there was no path.
Yeah.
All right. And the other thing also is, as Mr. Satz was talking about, yeah, we had a respect for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, we wanted to impress our instructors, is true, but for whatever it was that we had to wear,
Yeah.
we wore it with pride. Right. And as your teachers would say to you, even from high school, you can wear the same thing every day, but make sure that it's clean. All right. So that means if you had to wash it the night before, yes, you could wear it the next day. But that was one thing as a young person growing up in the area, I admired the college students when they would come, quote unquote, to the church.
Yeah.
Or many of them also lived, not many, but a number of them lived in the community
Yeah.
where I grew up and what have you. But they served as role models without them even knowing
Yeah.
that they were serving as a role model.
Yeah.
In both the social aspect of life, in the religious aspect of life, in many different areas. And the same with the faculty, because many of them attended the same church where I attended, which that church, Metropolitan, is also the founder of this institution.
Yeah.
So the linkage is still there.
Yeah.
Right. Many of us, even though we're adults now,
Yeah.
but it was because of the university or because of Maryland State College. I'm saying that the legacy between the two institutions, we have it with pride.
Yeah. And as we wrap up, a question that I have for you guys is for people whose lives were completely transformed by great advice given to you by those who came before you, is there any of that advice you'd like to pass down or leave us here with today?
For me, it would be the thing of whatever it is that you came here for, as far as education-wise, make sure you get that before leaving here, because other than that, this world will turn you upside down.
Yeah.
So make sure you feel qualified and that you've learned all you can learn before you leave here. So demand that from your instructors, demand that from other staff persons who are non-teaching personnel.
And from ourselves.
And
Yes.
absolutely, absolutely.
And always have a plan. You cannot walk blindly into anything.
Yeah.
Plan your work and work that plan, because I know that will work.
Yeah.
So, and pay attention. Always keep that keen eye out. Listen to your professors. Just always scope out the area. And just don't be a follower.
Yeah.
Unless you're following in a good plan.
One of the things that I take from Mosley is he used to always emphasize, take pride in everything you do. Said even if it's something menial such as cleaning up the studio, do the best job you can, because it's reflective of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And you want to be perceived as being a caring, loving person.
Yeah.
And you can't do that if you do things halfway.
That's true.
So thank you guys so much. Thank you for I appreciate that some of the advice you passed down. You saying work your plan was really interesting to me, because that advice has been passed down, I'd assume, many times now. And I think it's amazing to see that those people stay around forever through you guys, and you guys are still passing on their advice, and we appreciate that. I want to say a big thank you to Mr. Tillman, Ms. Stewart, and Mr. Satchel. And I just want to thank you guys for coming. Thank the audience for tuning in, and thank you guys. All right, bye. Thank you guys so much.